listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS podcast students. In this tutorial, we're going to look at topic ideas, grammar, vocabulary, and some model speaking and writing answers for the topic of pollution. I chose this topic because it's a very common one. I don't think you can go to a general news site today and not see an article about pollution. And this is important because that means it's relevant. And if it's relevant, just like social media, fake news, maybe even artificial intelligence, if it's relevant in today's society, then there's a high chance it's also relevant for the IELTS examiners who write the exam. And as I said, we're going to cover a very valuable and high-level grammar point, which, to be honest, I'm a big fan of this grammar point, and we're working on trying to incorporate it into our newest framework for the Sentence Guide course. And the new course, by the way, is going to be built all around the new tool we have, which is the AI essay check-in tool. We're seeing some great results with this, and it kind of just fits in with what I've been saying over the last couple of months, which is, smart students nowadays are using tools to pass the exam, not just information. I'll say that again. Smart students nowadays are using tools and not just information. Information can get you far, but it can be a little bit time consuming. But tools are really where the transformation is. As a friend said, it's transformation, not information. And that's what, you probably need if you're stuck on a 6.5. Now, before we get into this topic, and before we start talking about the pollution, the vocabulary, and this powerful grammar point I'm going to share with you, I just want to tell you who I am. My name is Ben Worthington. I've been teaching IELTS now for over 10 years. I decided to specialize in the IELTS exam because that's where the results are for a lot of students. That's where the motivated students are. That's where the smart students are. I had business students, I had adult learners, and sometimes they just wanted to maintain their English, which is fair enough. I can understand that. Sometimes they just wanted to, carry on steadily improving, every now and again learn a new feature. But that was boring for me. It was boring. And just to give you a side note, when I'm teaching English, I never sit down. I stand up, I'm in your face, I'm not dancing, but I'm walking around. I'm quite expressive because I want you to learn, I've had language tutors in the past, and it was like, oh, how was your weekend? What do you like to do in your free time? They sit down and they just bumble out these sentences, and it was incredibly frustrating. And what was even worse was sometimes we would cover vocabulary about Christmas, for example, when I was learning Spanish Christmas vocabulary. Super. And then we never covered it again. And it drove me mad. And I took all this learning, from learning a foreign language, and I tried to incorporate it into my classes. And this eventually is what led me to specialize in the IELTS exam. And I know for English learners, it's a similar situation, especially in Spain. There are so many borderline alcoholic tutors that they fall off a plane and then they start looking around for a job. And because they're native English speakers, they think they can teach English. Anyway, that's a whole other tutorial. Let's get back to the topic. I'm specializing in IELTS. I like to get results. And the specialization eventually led me to today, where we've got one of the most popular sites online for helping students pass the exam. We've got probably the most powerful tool for essay check-in. The feedback The premium feedback needs to be faster, in my opinion. And I just discovered as well a few days ago, and this hurts. You've got to change it to American English to get the best feedback. The British English isn't the best. And that hurts me, being from England, seeing these Americans taking control of my language. Anyway, that's another story. Let's jump into it today. So as I said, we're going to cover pollution. And the grammar point I want to share with you is not like a traditional grammar point. It's not like the conditionals or, subject, verb, object. This is a stylistic one. And I love teaching these because when I'm teaching these, we're focusing on, rather than just correction, which, as I just said, a machine can do, but we're focusing on improvement. And that really resonates with me and resonates with all my high-flying students. So this stylistic element, you can see it in sophisticated journalists even use this, like the Times and Financial Times. These papers, not so much the BBC, that's more about communication, but the classier ones, the sophisticated ones. So what is it? Well, what we do is when we're writing our essay, we write sentences that imply the position we're taking rather than explicitly outlining the position. And this indirect method allows for a more nuanced expression, and it shows a considerably higher level of language ability. So here is an example. So we could say that the explicit way of saying this sentence would be climate change is dangerous and regulations are needed. We really sort of said there was no nonsense there in that sentence. It was quite clear. Now, the more nuanced stylistic way would be, given the alarming rate of climate change, one might surmise that stricter pollution controls are needed. Can you see, we didn't explicitly say climate change is dangerous. We said, given the alarming rate of climate change. And it takes a higher level of English ability to write that, and also a higher level of English ability to understand that. So again, this skill, once you master it, will help you navigate probably the listening and reading exams as well, whereby you can pick up the meaning of the sentence without it actually explicitly saying it word for word. Again, higher level English skills. So let's go on. Another example. The increasing incidence of asthma suggests a link to pollution. We didn't say there asthma causes pollution or asthma is a consequence of pollution. We just implied it. Again, higher level skills. Next sentence. The declining bird population could be seen as an indictment of our pollution practices. We're not saying birds are dying because of pollution. A very straightforward, short sentence, punchy, a little bit choppy maybe if we're using a lot of them, but we're using a more sophisticated way. Again, the declining bird population could be seen as an indictment of pollution practices or of our pollution practices. Again, another sentence. From the smog hovering over cities, it would not be unreasonable to deduce a pressing need for cleaner technologies. Now, this could easily be argued as unclear, and there would be some merit in that argument. We've got two negatives. It would not be unreasonable. It's far clearer, and you've probably heard me in past tutorials. Let's get rid of this negative construction. Let's just say it would be unreasonable, and it's straightforward and it's clearer. However, the IELTS is a funny beast. It's a funny beast in that not only do we need to speak and write clearly so our position is understood, but we also have to be aware of the criteria. We also have to be aware this is an exam and we're going to pick up points by using a wide range of grammatical structures and devices, not to mention vocabulary. So just keep in mind, this is why I'm saying this is high level material, and if your writing is confusing, if you're using the tool and you're getting like a red flag for saying, simplify your argument, then perhaps just focus on the basics first. But if you're getting around, a 6.5, a 7, then this is probably within reach, especially if you're going for an 8 or a 9. This is going to help you. Final sentence. Considering the rise in oceanic dead zones, perhaps we ought to examine the role of pollution in aquatic ecosystems. Wow. Amazing sentence there, packed with topic-specific vocabulary, and also, obviously, it's got this implicit way of communicating, which I've been probably talking about for a while now. I'm so happy I've managed to get around to making this tutorial. Now, what are the pros and cons of pollution? Now, this might seem a little bit alarming for you. What could be the pros? What are the benefits of pollution? And at first I was hesitant, because how the heck can you argue that pollution is good? And that's why I decided to keep this in, because being able to write a coherent essay, being able to generate ideas, one of the skills you need to develop is looking at the point from looking at the argument, looking at the question from different points of view. And, giving you the pros of pollution will definitely be a point of view that you may not have considered before. So the pros of pollution, well, it often correlates with industrial growth and development. A country, when a country industrializes, and look at China, for example, they are probably one of the biggest polluters in the last 30 years. I'm not getting into why or how, whatever. Along with the United States when they were industrializing, along with the UK when they were industrializing. But the point is, when a country usually shifts from agrarian to an agrarian society where they're just basically producing food for sustenance to survive, they often have to burn a lot of coal to create the energy to power the machines, and therefore pollution often correlates with industrial growth and development. Next point. Overcoming pollution requires a significant investment in research and development. And again, you can develop this further by talking about green energy. So it's a very easy to grasp argument that's also easy to develop. Talk about green energy, talk about maybe government subsidies, talk about job creation from the increased investment. Final point. Allowing pollution via looser regulations may encourage economic growth. This is what a lot of developing countries argue. Just to step back here, a lot of the developing countries say, hey, United States, China, England, all of you polluted the world to get to your economic level, to your economic standard of living at the moment, which is considerably high. Why can't we in Nepal, in Cambodia, wherever, burn fuels also in order to improve the standard of living for our citizens? It's not fair that you could use all this cheap fuel and now you're telling us we shouldn't, and we should invest in green energy. We don't have the money or the technology to invest in green technology. So again, I just wanted to explain that point and develop it further. Now, the cons of pollution are obviously quite long. And I think as well, quite straightforward. Pollution contributes significantly to global warming. Various forms of pollution lead to health problems, asthma, cardiovascular diseases. It can negatively impact biodiversity, It can harm local economies that depend on clean environments such as tourism and fishing. Great point there, because it's straightforward, it's easy to grasp, and it's very straightforward to develop, which is what we need to do if we're writing a coherent essay. Pollution affects the aesthetic appeal and quality of life in residential areas. Linked to the point above, so in one of our frameworks we suggest you give a few points and then you develop one of them. So that could easily be one of the smaller points, and then you talk about tourism, and then you talk about the loss of jobs because now the lake is polluted. And if you're going for high points, you could even talk about it in a conditional sense, which is a tutorial which we're going to be covering soon. Here are some topic-specific vocabulary collocations and phrases you could use. Air quality index, carbon footprint. I see carbon footprint in a lot of essays and I see it used incorrectly. So I'm going to give you a model sentence where you can learn the phrase in its context. Eco-friendly practices, greenhouse gas emissions, non-renewable resources, ozone layer depletion. I like the verb depletion here. Especially useful. You do not see it very often. It might even be a new word for some of our listeners. Ozone layer depletion. Pollution is one of the major, CO2 gases is one of the major, actually it's not. What is contributing to ozone layer depletion? I think it was CFCs, if I remember correctly. CFCs significantly contribute to ozone layer depletion, or have in previous years. Gases such as CFCs and methane considerably contribute to ozone layer depletion. If you get that wrong, you don't really have to worry about it that much. It's a minor point. This is not an essay asking about your knowledge of pollution to a certain extent. It's an essay more about asking or determining your ability to explain complex topics. So if you include CO2 instead of CFCs or methane, I wouldn't worry about it so much. It's still relatively believable. Renewable energy, waste management, water contamination, wildlife conservation. Model sentences using these phrases. Considering the rapid ozone layer depletion, one might argue that more emphasis should be placed on eco-friendly practices. Pause. Was that sentence explicit or implicit? Again, considering the rapid ozone layer depletion, one might argue that more emphasis should be placed on eco-friendly practices. I would say that's quite implicit. It's still strong, but it's implicit. Air quality index readings in many cities suggest an urgent need for better waste management practices. Again, implicit. The rise in greenhouse gas emissions could potentially be curbed by a global shift towards renewable energy. I suggest you write these down. You're learning new terms, you're learning them in context. Writing them down makes this transforms this tutorial from a passive activity while you're riding your bike or on the bus, on the train, or just cooking a paella or whatever, transforms this activity into a more active one. And the more active the learning is, the more senses are involved, the more chances you have of recalling, remembering, and reusing the information shared. And as I said, I'm a big fan of using tools, transformation rather than just information, and making the class an active tutorial rather than a passive one is one step towards getting that transformation rather than just the information. Final sentence. The state of our rivers and oceans marred by water contamination might prompt a call for improved regulation of industrial waste. Beautiful sentence, and probably a new word there that you may not have used. Marred. It just means dirtied or polluted by, marred by water contamination. Now you may have heard that word pronounced differently. I heard myself say it and I was like, wow, that sounds like Northern English. And that's totally natural because I'm from the north of England, and some verb sounds, some vowel sounds will forever be Northern in my vocabulary. Right then, if you want a model essay about pollution, then jump on our newsletter. We are making an ebook all about topic ideas and vocabulary, and this ebook contains model essays, model speaking answers, the grammar points covered. I'm not going to read out the essay. I don't think it's the best use of our time right now, but you can definitely sign up and you will get the ebook in your inbox. And if you don't get it when you sign up, then that means we're still making it, and when we finish making it, we'll send it out to all our list anyway. So you're going to get it. So go to IELTSPodcast.com, sign up. You'll get that ebook or the tutorial eventually or instantly, depending on when you sign up. And you'll also get an introduction on how to pass the course fast using tools rather than information. Final part of the tutorial. Speaking part 3, questions and model answers. Why do you think pollution has become a significant problem in the modern world? Pause the tutorial now. Maybe just think of a few points. You've got 2 ways to approach this. You can pause the tutorial and think in your head, I would answer it this way. But I promise you, and I know this from having learnt numerous second languages, that the confidence you have in your head has to be tested by your ability to say it out loud. Trust me, when you start talking, when you open your mouth and you start saying it out loud, you run into obstacles you would have never thought possible. Question: why do you think pollution has become a significant problem in the modern world? Well, to be honest, I think it's largely down to industrialization and the consumer-driven society we live in. We're using non-renewable resources at an alarming rate, which contributes significantly to pollution. It's like we're on a runaway train and we need to find a way to apply the brakes. Wow. It's like we are on a runaway train. What does that mean? That's an idiomatic expression I just slipped in there. Well, it means a situation that's out of control and will probably lead to trouble. Now, an extension of that is one phrase that I often use, which is, it's a train crash. Okay, so don't use them together. It sounds forced. However, it's like we are on a runaway train. That's an expression we can use to explain a situation that's out of control and will probably lead to trouble. Should governments be held responsible for addressing pollution? Well, that's a tricky question. To be honest, I've never really thought about it before. But I guess I believe so, yes. Governments have the power and resources to enforce regulations on industries contributing to pollution. For instance, they could incentivize eco-friendly practices and invest in renewable energy. Short and sweet, topic-specific vocabulary in there. Not every question has to be answered extensively. When you get the opportunity to answer extensively and you feel confident, go for it. Develop the answer further. Give some example. Give it an anecdote. Otherwise, just keep it simple. Your opportunity will come. Now, we are out of time. As I said, if you want this full tutorial, then you can go to IELTSPodcast.com. You can sign up there. You'll get the Pass Fast tutorial course, and you'll also get this new ebook we are producing at this very moment in time. Also, when you sign up, you'll also get, as I said, this tutorial, and the tutorial contains links to further reading. If you have time, definitely dive into further reading. And these links are quality, authentic material. What does that mean? It means it's talking about the topic in its natural environment by experts, not an IELTS tutor talking about wildlife conservation or whatnot. It's probably a scientist or a dedicated journalist on the topic from a reputable source such as BBC News, and you're going to find the information here. You're going to find more information about the topic in context, which is probably the best. But honestly, it takes a lot of time to do the reading, and I know you're probably frustrated, probably pushed for time already. And so getting a topic-specific tutorial with examples, IELTS-specific examples, is definitely the faster way. As I just said, though, however, if you've got the time, jump into the material. That's it. I strongly recommend you go to IELTSPodcast.com, sign up there, get moving with your IELTS preparation, and get ready for Canada, get ready for the UK, get ready for New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, Germany, wherever you intend to go. We want to get you there. You can do this. You're working hard. I know there's obstacles there. I know it's frustrating. Keep your head down. Keep moving. Last thing, personal note. Whenever I get an obstacle, a slap in the face, I hit a roadblock, I just say next. Next. Try and deal with it, or I'll put it on pause. Next, just move on to the next project. You can do this. Keep moving. And good luck with your IELTS preparation.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.